So, for the past couple of weeks, I've been dealing with a bunch of different arguments about COVID 19 and whether we should reopen now or lock it all down. And you know that I'm in the latter camp. And one of the arguments that I have heard is, oh, so churches have to shut down, but abortion clinics, they're essential. Why are you going to close my church if you're not going to close down that clinic? And this is now my response. So, this is a study that was originally posted as an early release on May 12th, and it actually got a whole bunch of news outlets to cover this story, and there's still reporters that are trying to reach all of the members of this choir. And what happened here is a nightmare. Okay, so there was a choir practice that happened in Skagit County, Washington, in March of 2020. And this was prior to the shutdown orders that were given by uh, the governor of that state, which happened about 2 weeks after this case happened. But basically, there was a 122 member choir, and at this practice that happened on March 10th, 61 people were there and attended that practice, right? And of those 61 people, 53 cases of COVID 19 were identified, 33 confirmed, and 20 probable because they were right next to confirmed cases, right? And all of this happened from a 2.5 hour choir practice, right? And in the end, two of these choir members died from this outbreak, okay? So, what they did in this choir practice was basically um, they did for 2.5 hours, right? They did about 40 minutes of singing together. Then they split up into smaller groups where they were doing like a 50-minute practice in different groups. And then they did another practice where in the larger room, like people were sitting right next to each other in like pairs. And then there was like a 15-minute break with snacks, with cookies and oranges. And then in the end, they did a final 45-minute practice in their original seats, all breathing the same air in an enclosed space, 61 people all together, right? Um, there's a link in the description box, by the way, to this if you want to follow along. I do recommend everyone read all of the studies that I like to go over on my channel. But um, basically, what this study is saying is choir practice is dangerous. This COVID-19 disease is something that spreads aerosolized, right, through the air, and not just like when you are, within distance of being able to have your spittle land on something. Just the fog in the air that surrounds somebody that is symptomatic. That stuff, the aerosol stuff in the air spreading is contagious, right? And so what we had was, if we look down at this scary chart here, the index patient, right, the one who they think spread it around, he said that he got sick between March 6th and March 8th. He was symptomatic right here, right? He got tested and he was confirmed to have the coronavirus, right? So the choir practice that he attended was on March 10th. Now, of course, he got over it around the middle of the 7th of March. So on the 10th, he felt okay to go to practice, right? But he was still contagious. And then the median time for people to show symptoms after he spread this infection around to 60 other people in his choir, the median time right here was about 3 days later. So the 11th, a couple of people got sick. The 12th, some people got sick. And around this time, between the 12th and the 15th, they were emailing each other like, hey, stay home. We think that there's something spreading around our choir people, right? So all of this right here, these cases right here, were when these symptoms had onset, and the blue one, the dark blue ones here, those are the ones that were tested, confirmed that was COVID-19. The light blue ones, these are people who decided not to uh, get tested, but their symptoms were probable, right? And then there's a couple outliers here that got sick with a few symptoms later, and they're calling these one tested positive right here, one or a couple here, and then a couple here. It's the major onset happened after they were exposed on the 10th. By about the 17th, they pretty much all showed their symptoms, right? But what we know about this virus is, even after you beat it, you're still contagious for a while, and that's what happened here, right? Um, Going through the discussion, right? Uh, what really stands out to me the most is where it says SARS-CoV-2 might be highly transmissible in certain settings, including group singing events, right? And for my lifestyle, I don't attend a choir. I don't even attend anything that has a choir in it, right? But I do like to go to the occasional rock and roll concert. And when I do, I sing along sometimes, and so does the rest of the crowd. And they last for about as long as this choir practice happened. So the big difference between this choir practice and the things that I like to do is there's thousands of people in the crowd where I like to go. This was only 61 people in this, but they weren't performing in front of a crowd. They were just practicing. You know, what this tells me is you have a group of people practicing with no audience, and they can still get each other sick in a cluster, and some of them are going to die. And some of them are going to be hospitalized. They get a few more people than the people who died got hospitalized, right? And this also has implications for sporting events where you might think, oh well, it'd be okay if they had the game without the crowd, right? Well, what do you have at a game? You have people who are huffing and puffing, winding themselves, breathing heavy around each other, right? Now, in an open space like uh, an arena for football that doesn't have a dome, you might be a little bit better with fresh air in there. But, basketball events have just as many people as this outbreak, this cluster, would have. Yeah, there's only a certain number of players on the court at once, but then there's the people on the bench, there's the coaches, you know, add it all up, and you're going to have between the two teams at least as many people as this outbreak. Same thing with football, you know. Baseball, you might be able to do a little bit safer if you were able to turn the stands into giant uh, bullpens where everybody was distanced from each other, and the only uh, time that somebody would come into contact with each other would be around the bases. At least that would be a little bit safer than the other sports, and you're not huffing and puffing as much. We'll just be honest there, you know. But it looks like we're going to have to get really into watching golf if we're going to have sports that are safe, because an outbreak like this could just as easily happen at a sporting event where just one person shows up spreading around the virus, whether they know that they were sick or not, and then everybody else there gets it. In this 2.5 hour period, it was like 87% of the 61 people showed up. Got it? Right? That's what it says here on the first page. 53 cases, 86.7% of them, right? So 61 people showed up, 53 got it because one person, the index patient, had it and showed up to practice, right? I'm not even saying that just, NFL football should be canceled for a while. NFL football practice should be canceled for a while. This was choir practice. So, yeah, there's a reason why churches should not be open for business as usual and are better off done over the internet, over Zoom for a while, and other things where you only have a couple people in a room where they're performing medical procedures that can't wait. Those things, those could be done a little bit safer, with masks, and you don't have to have heavy breathing by everyone there, and you can take better precautions. Um, Last thing I'm going to say on this is, yeah, the power of Christ washing over you is not going to save you from COVID-19. You know, you don't have this invisible force field of the Holy Spirit that viruses care about. So be safe. You know, I know that I'm not a very religious person, and that I'm probably eyeballing every uh, church for being a stained glass library 200 years from now. But that doesn't mean that I want anyone to die from this. Nobody needs to die from this needlessly. So stay safe. All right. So let's see. We're going to go to the chat for a second. I am Godard says, surely the rights publishing for reopening is logically incompatible with their professed pro-life ethos. Um, yeah, it's strange how the people who are pro-life before someone is born are not so pro-life after someone was born. But that hypocrisy has been around for quite some time. It's just this is a little bit more acute in how it causes random deaths of you can't even predict who's going to die from it or not when they do get infected. There are probabilities for sure, but you know some people, you know they showed up to these things, and they didn't expect that there was a good chance that out of the 61 people there, two would be dead in 2 weeks. You know. Um, by the way, the church that, not the church, the choir that it happened to. I'll go back here. The choir that it happened to is not named in this CDC study that was put out, this case study, but they have named themselves on their website, uh, the Skagit Valley Choral, and they have, you know, some messages for people, that they're mourning, and they still want to get this out there, to personalize the story. So it's not a bad thing to name them. It's just CDC has kind of a standard procedure for these things to kind of anonymize it a little bit. So they only said the county right here, but you know even in the, Skagit was in the name of the choral that it is, but also what they removed out of the study, and they talk about this as well, is they actually did so much research on what happened during that 2.5 hour practice that they had the seating chart for each part of this practice, how they all split up into groups and who went where and stuff, and they're not publishing the seating chart because it would identify the index carrier, and then that person would, of course, be blamed for getting everybody sick, which eventually led to the death of two of them and endangered the lives of everyone. So, yeah, um, I found that interesting. Back to the chat. Bugsy said, "Good evening." Mm, good evening, buh. Uh, Rodline wants to know how many were asymptomatic. Well, that is actually in the study. You can click it and read it yourself. Um, we'll just go back here for a second. So there's all the expression of all the symptoms right there. Uh, I don't know what you're going to get from finding out how many were asymptomatic totally out of this. It seems like there was this weird combination of sickness, and one of them, he only reported one symptom, which was the loss of taste and smell that some people report, and that was the only symptom he had. So otherwise asymptomatic, that one. So then Rodline says in the chat, then they all swapped spit. No, no, it was all aerosolized, but some of them did eat the snacks of the cookies and oranges, and some of them didn't, and that's not really what they think was the biggest contributor to this. It was the forceful expulsion of air when you're trying to hold a note. They were basically breathing each other's uh, breath while singing. That was the big thing. And this happens in a lot of churches uh, where they have, singing time as being like half of the service. They have hymnals in the pews where they open it up, all sing from the same page in the hymnal, and they're all, the whole church, singing, and breathing in, breathing out, really heavy, you know. And so this is the reason why we cannot have that kind of congregation. Now, the assemblies that I would go to, like the rock concert example, or even political protests, you know, they can't be happening. You know, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to miss out on a lot of my favorite things to do because of coronavirus. And this is presidential election year. Uh, just look at my channel and what I had on it the last presidential election cycle. You know, especially the day after uh, Trump was elected, I was out there filming all these protests. You know, for a while, people were energized, and I was out there filming it. It was really the heyday of my political videos on my channel. You know, I really love that stuff, and I can't, in good conscience, even if other people are doing it, I can't show up to that. You know, I can't lend myself to that. Rodline says, well, my wife might be out of a job then. She's a middle school band director. This doesn't bode well. Um, you could still do band practice over the internet, right? It does require high speed internet, and you know there's better uh, things than Zoom. But yeah, there are even bands that are practicing over the internet right now. You know, rock bands and whatnot. Um, Morning, Michelle. Uh, wow, Rodline, you left me a lot of comments. Um, Rodline said, should it be a person's choice to go to church, knowing that they may get sick? Should we force them to stay at home? Um, we shouldn't be uh, needlessly risking people's lives. You know, I think that it's a pretty good restriction right now to keep people from uh, congregating in this way, because we could have already uh, right now on May 15th of 2020, we could have, with a complete lockdown, already been virus free if we all could do the same thing for 3 weeks. But we couldn't, because half of us don't even want to acknowledge that the virus exists, because we're so politically divided that even facts become something that, oh, that other political party is just trying to trick us and trying to make us think our president's doing a bad job. Rah, we have to go out there and express our freedom, America. You know, if we could all get on the same page of music for 3 weeks, this thing would go away. But there's just this element of people in America that just will not listen. So, you know, the fight continues and thousands more die every day, to the point where we're actually used to it now after 2 months. Thousands of people dead again today. Oh, you know. And in a couple weeks after these states reopen, I'm expecting another 9/11 worth of people dying every day. Right now it's every 2 days, you know, but Barry, you put PB and J in the chat again. I'm uh I'm happy you didn't put the little pine cones, because then you might you know, have me be the target of more strange videos. Um, Michelle and Rod are having a fight in my chat. Um, I think Bugsy's saying that he ate a PB&J once or twice, more than once. And Bugsy makes a very good point. We shouldn't have to force people to stay home, but they're too uncaring. Well, I just want to say that because of the director of that choral sending out emails to everyone and everyone getting on that same page of music that were exposed on March 10th and deciding to self quarantine themselves, this was not as bad as it could have been because that choir could have gone out and spread it to a whole bunch of other people. They used contact tracing. They told everyone who came into contact with those choir members that you might have it, and they got people self quarantined within like 2 weeks of having coming into contact with that choir practice or people who were at the choir practice, and it was just that outbreak was not as bad as it could have been, you know. And so credit has to be given to the fact that they were carrying enough when they realized what was going on. You know, not every person who goes to choir practice is the enemy. You know, um, half the people I know that share the politics that would have everyone be as safe as possible, they go to church. And they're missing out on that fellowship that they like to do. So I don't just put them all inside this box. I feel like uh, if you read the study, link in the description box to the study, you'll see that they were caring as soon as they realized what was going on. And they realized firsthand, most of them, that it's for real. 53 of them came down with symptoms, and a lot of them had the cough, the fever, the myalgia, the sore muscles, you know, the headaches, the chills, all of that stuff. Those were the top symptoms they were having. So, yeah. Anyways, stay safe. Uh, that's all I got. Choir practice is canceled.